All right, I think we're ready for the interpreters to share.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Mónica y junto a mi colega Fabiola seremos las intérpretes asignadas para esta junta. Se utilizará la función de interpretación de Zoom para soporte en inglés y español. Todos los participantes de esta llamada deben seleccionar su idioma de preferencia haciendo clic en el idioma correspondiente cuando el anfitrión active la función de interpretación. Dicha función se encuentra en el panel de herramientas en el icono del globo terráqueo. El modo de interpretación para esta reunión será el simultáneo. Gracias por su atención y colaboración. Good evening, everyone. My name is Monica, and my colleague's name is Fabiola. We will be the interpreters for this meeting. I will also, well, actually, I just said it in Spanish. The Zoom interpretation feature will be used in this Zoom meeting for English and Spanish support. All participants on this call must select their language of preference by clicking the language when the host turns on the interpretation feature. This is found in the world icon located on your feature panel. Interpretation for this meeting will be conducted simultaneously. Thank you for your attention and collaboration.
Thank you. All right, I call this meeting to order at 7:01, and I see that all board members are present. So we are on to item number 2, approval of tonight's agenda. If there are any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. And not seeing any board, is there a motion?
I move to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. We are now on to item number 3, comments from the board and superintendent. And a reminder, try to keep it just a few minutes since we have lots that we're going over tonight. And then you can just go from one person next. So we'll go Isabel and then Jeff and Nancy and then Bridget. And hi, I got on right at the end, so I didn't really get to say hi to you guys. So hello, good to see you. All right, go ahead, Isabel.
Okay, forgot to look for that. Well, we have a lot of meetings. I have a meeting last week with the Kaiser Permanente local health plan. We had a meeting with the, well, nothing to report actually. The meetings, I'll send them later. All with it. Thanks.
So I did participate in several webinars and things like that, but I think the highlight of my week was actually the Future Top Chefs judging competition, which was so hard, by the way. Usually I don't get to participate in that, but because it was more of a virtual approach, I was able to this time, and it was a lot of fun, and we have a lot of talent in our district, and but it was so difficult to choose between all of them.
So it's a busy time of year for staff and families, and times to say well done, and times to say goodbye. And so I appreciate the board being there to support everyone in those comings and goings and transitions as we move towards summer. I will turn in my activities, but I wanted to thank the board for covering all the little spots of the busy, hectic, fun, fast, and fabulous end of our school year this year. So thank you.
So just 2 quick things. First of all, I really did enjoy the virtual Teacher of the Year and retiree celebration. It was great to see people who had retired last year encourage the incoming retirees, like it's great. Don't worry. And it was just nice to, the people who spoke and the people who just were honored. It was just so great to see everybody, being celebrated and acknowledged. And so that was really wonderful. The other thing is, I know I'm just going to use my 1 minute to say, the VTA killings were like a week and a half ago, and it seems like much longer ago because it's been in the news a lot. It seems like there have been a lot of memorials already, and it's almost all the way through the news cycle. It's almost as though we stopped talking about it. And I know that there's a nonpartisan group here in the Bay Area called Moms Demand Action that talks about where they have programs where they go into schools and they talk about gun safety. And so I just wanted to put it out there. I don't know if we have a sort of centralized approach to parent training. I know there's some things that happen across the district and there's things that happen in each school, but and it is different than mass shooting, but it just starts talking about just common sense gun safety, because people in our community do have guns. So anyway, I just wanted to, I don't know if we do have that or not, but I know we do have some district level training. So hearts and prayers is one thing, but if you want something else, we have to write it in to our elected officials. Okay, that's my 2 seconds.
Thank you, Bridget. So I too loved attending some of the kind of end of the year celebrations where we were celebrating, the one that Bridget had mentioned about the staff of the year and retirees. I also was able to attend some of the new teacher induction celebrations. So that's been really fun, and just echoing everyone else, we appreciate all the hard work that everyone has put in this year. It's all right. School is always tricky and hard, but this year has been above and beyond in the difficulties and the challenges. And so just appreciate everybody. Just wanted to share on a personal note, I have 2 kids who are moving on. So I've got one finishing 8th grade and one finishing 5th grade this year. So kind of a big year for our family. And then I just wanted to, I have 2 things I want to share. I'm being extra emotional. So I'm sharing why I'm extra emotional. Just wanted to let you guys know on a personal note, my mind might be a little bit not quite there as much today. So my oldest son got an injury yesterday, and he has a fracture, and it was serious enough that they said, we actually need you to go get a CT scan, but there was no appointment. So like, I was going to go with him, but then I had to go to my meeting. So my husband came and met us there, and they waited for several hours. So he might have to have a surgery. So it's just, my last 24 hours has been a little bit stressful. And I was sharing with Mike, and I was like, I think I'm going to cry even sharing this. Like, that's how emotional I'm being right now. So I just wanted to share that. So if I'm a little bit off tonight or not fully focused, you will know a little bit why. And then the last piece I wanted to share, which I might get emotional as well, but different from my personal family. So just kind of, I wanted to acknowledge that this week is the 100-year anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, which just awful thing that happened in our country. But there was a quote, something that President Biden shared, and I just really love this. This was kind of, it just speaks more broadly, but it's kind of maybe my new favorite quote. And so I just want to share that quickly. So he said, there's greater recognition that for too long, we've allowed a narrow, cramped view of the promise of this nation to fester. The view that America is a zero-sum game where there's only one winner. If you succeed, I fail. If you get ahead, I fall behind. If you get a job, I lose mine. And maybe worst of all, if I hold you down, I lift myself up. Instead of, if you do well, we all do well. And I loved that quote. I think it applied to so many things in life. And I also finished off Project Cornerstone lessons this week. And so I just feel like that quote fits perfectly with everything we learned in Project Cornerstone. So it just had touched me this week, and I wanted to share that with everybody. I apologize for taking a little bit longer tonight. And I probably will cry more tonight than I normally do. All right, Mike, go ahead.
Thank you. And there's no shame in showing emotion. It just shows that you're human. So that's fine. Just a couple of things. First of all, I'm very excited to report that we've connected with the county, Santa Clara County Department of Public Health, and they will be having a vaccination clinic at Sunnyvale Middle School on June 8th. So just next week, it's a quick turnaround. The school and the district, and by the district, I mean Aaliyah, will be doing a lot of work to be putting out the information quickly. Our vision for this is to have every eligible student vaccinated by the first day of school. So that's our vision. They were able to accommodate Sunnyvale Middle School first. We're working with them to get dates for Columbia Middle School. The way it'll work is they'll have the Pfizer vaccine obviously available for kids 12 and over. We're going to try to do it at Sunnyvale Middle School during school hours to start off. I don't want to go into all the details, but parent permission slip is all that's necessary. Parents can come if they want. Again, all this information will be made available. We'll also open up the clinic to our community, and we'll use our social workers and our teams to push out that information to our families to have older kids vaccinated as well, and adults. And my understanding is that they'll have the J&J vaccine also available for adults if that's what they choose. So I guess we're at a point where folks can choose their vaccine. So that's exciting. So again, we'll get more information on that out very quickly because it's a quick turnaround. It's just next week, which is the last week of school, but it's super important. Then they'll come back in 3 weeks and maybe 3 weeks after that. And then we're going to get the Columbia Middle School vaccination clinic going as well. So, and then I guess I'd also say on that, we've been talking to El Camino about what they can do to support in our vaccination efforts as well. And it's very early to say, but part of our thinking is once the vaccine is approved for younger kids, that maybe El Camino would be able to help us with that, to go directly to schools to facilitate that for families. So we really want to be proactive about that. And we're so fortunate in this country, in this state, in this county, that we're able to get these vaccines out, because as we know, that's not the case everywhere. Second thing I wanted to talk about real quickly is just to recognize that this is the beginning of Gay Pride Month. And I wanted to share with you some comments that were Marianne Dewan shared from the County Office of Education, kind of about what we can do to celebrate. And what I appreciated about this is what she said about this particular month, I think applies actually to all students. And so some of the quotes were, every youth deserves to feel a sense of belonging. So that's critical. And that what adults can do this month is to model compassion. So that means that we start with listening, we model inclusion and kindness, we let youth be who they are, and we educate ourselves to stay informed and to be an ally for all youth. So again, that applies to all kids, but it's nice to have that particular focus on LGBTQ kids and families, and staff and employees at this time of year. So with that, that's all I have.
Thanks, Mike. All right, we are now on to item 4, comments from the Sunnyvale Education Association. If there's an official representative who wishes to speak, please use the raise hand feature.
We have Oscar, which I believe is next for CSCA, correct?
Yeah, Oscar will be next if there's not somebody from SEA. So I'm assuming SCA does not have anything to say right now. So we will move on to 5 comments from the California School Employees Association.
All right, Oscar, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hello.
So we just want to thank everybody for the hard work that you guys do. But especially we would like to thank the classified employees, because since the beginning, they were there for us, and school is about to be over and they're still there for us. So we just would like to thank everybody. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Oscar. We are now on to item 6, comments from the public. As a reminder, this portion of the agenda provides an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the governing board on any item of interest to the public. However, provisions of the Brown Act preclude any action being taken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Time limits allocated for public testimony are 3 minutes per person and a total of 20 minutes for public comments. Speakers are asked to give their name and affiliation so that an accurate record is reflected in the minutes. So if there's anyone who wishes to speak, and again, this is for non-agendized items, there will be time to speak on agendized items as we get to those items. So if there's anyone who wishes to speak, please use the raise hand feature now.
So far we have one hand raised, and it's DEO.
Just want to start off by saying, Michelle, I'm not sure if there's a head injury involved, but as someone that's had a spine tumor and hit the road at 30 miles an hour and has had all kind of stuff, spent time in many Kaiser hospitals and intensive care at Stanford. Trust the modern doctors. They're pretty good. Not sure, don't be too worried. Just listen to the doctors and follow your mind. Second, I highly want to back Bridget's comment on gun safety training. I'll tell you a little story. I come from the gun-toting South, and I've taught my child about gun safety and how to handle them. Supposedly there was a study done. I really should someday go look it up, so I have a copy of it, where they placed a firearm, like in a living room type setting, and let various children come in and watch what they did. And supposedly all those from gun owning households did not touch the firearm and got an adult and alerted them to the situation. Whereas those from households where guns are a mystery and they didn't have any firearm safety, information given to them, they tended to pick them up and play with them. And that's a danger. So I think it's an excellent idea that Bridget has of some amount of firearm safety, because that truly is good lifelong skills knowledge. And I don't know of anyone on any side of the aisle on the topic that would be against that. So that's my statements.
Thank you very much. And that was the only hand we had raised.
All right, thank you. And just wanted to share, David, luckily, no, thank you for sharing those thoughts. Luckily, no, when he called me yesterday from his soccer practice and said he fell, my first question was your head. And luckily there has been no head injuries connected to it, just his elbow. But thank you for your reach out. I appreciate that. All right, we are now on to item 7, the presentations, and we have one presentation tonight. It is the Sunnyvale School District 2021 Spring Panorama Survey results. And I believe we're turning the time over to Tasha.
Good evening, and fingers crossed that we get this right. Let's see. And I'm going to exit one more time. Sorry, I did it out of order, so I can't share yet. Okay, Are we there? Excellent. Good evening, board and community. Glad to present a summary, and it is definitely a summary, and that's kind of what I want to emphasize as we kind of go through the presentation today. There's so much wonderful information that our community has provided to us, and it's sometimes difficult to get to all of it, but we're going to do our very best to make it as meaningful as possible. Okay. So with the survey results, we continue to ask our students, our staff, and our families questions. And each time there's a little bit different change to the survey because we let the last survey influence the next survey. That's a part of it. The other part of that is we try to use this survey to inform our practice, right? So informing our LCAP plans, informing our safety plans, using the data to try to figure out what should we keep, what should we get rid of, what do we need to improve upon. And so we're using that to kind of help guide our path a little bit. And so as we go through the presentation tonight, just ask for you to think about that. It helps us to have reflectiveness about the data. And our goal is to attempt to build a data story. We realize we're not giving you each and every voice, but we are trying to give you a story of the voices that we've heard from and letting our school teams go into the depths of that detail so that they can utilize that in their day-to-day planning, all the way down to our classroom level planning with students. So as we go through the presentation this evening, we'll focus again, on who was in the survey, what types of questions were asked, looking at the perception data on particular topics that we thought would more inform where we are at this time of the year in our programming as a school district, and then some of the things that are to come as well. And then looking at some of our top priorities, we'll hear more about our LCAP plan. So some of that is a part of that. And then also our next steps, what are we using this for and how is it basically informing our practice? So this particular slide, and this will be available, of course, on our website as well. So families and community can click on the surveys to remind them of what those are. Those surveys are also on our website, and we usually keep those there until the next survey time, and then we change them out and the new surveys are available there. And it just kind of gives an outline of what are the focus of our survey data. You'll see there's some consistency, but there's some inconsistencies because there's particular things we want to ask our families and communities, our staff, and then of course our students. So that's where the differences in questions come up to try to get to the answers we're seeking and the voices that we need to inform our practice. So as we continue with our survey results, we feel really good about the feedback that we're getting. Each time I feel like the information becomes a little more authentic. I think families and community are beginning to trust, or staff are. I think they're beginning to see more signs of how we're utilizing the data. So that's helpful in getting that. And we're becoming more efficient. Unfortunately, in this past year and a half or so, we've done a lot of surveys. So, so that's good and that's bad all at the same time. But we definitely continue to send the surveys home. We're trying now to think about our family survey. At this time, we send that survey to all members who are listed, but we're rethinking that and what is really best. Should we just send one home or continue to send two home or what? So we'll look at that and probably ask a very specific question about that to our families specifically prior to our next survey, which will be in the fall of 2021. So this is our updated slide, and I think there were some questions about our survey results. I'm always wanting more. We're always wanting more. We'd love to hear from each and every one. But each time I think we're doing a little bit better. The family survey this time around, we did increase it from our rate in the fall, which was positive. So we increased that about 5%. So that's good. The numbers, we gave numbers instead of percentages for our schools, so it could be more reflective of how many families we really are talking about to hopefully make that a little bit more meaningful. And the same for our student and our staff. And our student surveys, we dropped down just a little bit, a couple of points there, 5 points there actually. And I'm not surprised given we had students in different classrooms, different scenarios, some in independent studies, some went back to virtual. So just kind of figure out where the kids were to get to them, pose a few more challenges for us this spring. And then again, our staff survey, we had a 20% increase there from our results in the fall. So we were real positive about the responses, and I do feel that the comments have been very thorough in helping us with our planning. So as we get more specifically into the data, we did, in this presentation, the team did emphasize a few more comments from family. Overall, we had about 11 open-ended questions from our families. And so we emphasized this a little bit more. So one, based upon voices from the last time we presented, wanting to hear a little bit more about some of those open-ended questions. The other reason to kind of be sure we're aware of what our community is saying, meaning our stakeholders outside of the immediate school community, to really inform our practice about our plans moving forward. So the moving forward was how to get to the end of this school year, how to plan for our summer programming, and then ultimately our schools coming this fall in 2021. So on this particular slide, about the food situation, we get some specific answers about food as well. You know, we have the responses here, but then we have comments later that you'll see, of course, and you've had an opportunity to look at some of the top areas and what are some of those needs. So this is an area that our school teams look at pretty carefully to try to be sure of what's happening, what the particular needs are. I know as a board, this has been an area of great concern, and I do see a different flavor and feeling about the comments that are coming. So I do feel the work that's been happening is making a difference, and the changes that we're making are supporting our community. So I feel like more are getting what they need. It's still not perfect, but I think it is moving in the right direction. The next area for families had to do with their family needs. You'll see some of those areas listed here: housing, childcare, etc. And you'll see that families are very concerned about socio-emotional needs also in this survey. Another strong indicator of why we continue to offer, ask these questions, seek their input on their family situations, but also how are they feeling about their students? So their voices, the input we get, continue to let us know it's important to ask this question, so we continue to do so. So getting into some of those comments, what we tried to do in our slides for this presentation is to try to capture the themes. There's some variability in that for sure, you know, from one end of the spectrum to the other, but overall there was a bit of a theme. So we tried to share ones that as much as possible convey those themes, but also doesn't call out any particular schools in that. And even as I went through the presentation, I still saw some other ones we missed, because we don't want any one school or community to feel as though they didn't do something great because they weren't listed. So we're just trying to keep it equitable as we presented the comments that were coming across the district for the different voices from our families. This one is there anything else you would like us to know about your family needs at this time? What was really captured here and we tried to emphasize is some of the considerations that we've made in our upcoming LCAP plan, some of the things that we've done to finish off this school year around the areas of communication, our independent study. The feedback we got here really helped influence some considerations that we have moving forward for that programming. The academic supports that we're offering, as well as some of the socio-emotional needs of our students. So this information we are looking at it. It is informing our practice, and we're trying to capture that as much as possible in our work. This particular area is really a new targeted question, and is actually informing some earlier conversations and some of the work that Mala and her team have done in some of the sessions they had with families. You know, communication is critical. And so we did incorporate that into our survey this year, trying to get the diversity of voices around communication and what's really needed. And so this just captures a bit of that flavor. What's good, maybe what's not so good. How can we get better at it? And you'll probably be hearing much more in the future around communication and some recommendations that Aaliyah and I will be working on to move forward in this particular area as well. Another area on communication, again, we don't want to throw everything out. So we want to see what is working, what is helping families, so we can build on the things that seem to be positive, strengthen them, and then add some new things into the fold that may reach some families potentially that we are not meeting at this time as effectively as we really can. One of my favorite questions, do you feel welcome on our campuses and safe to share your thoughts? What can we do to help you feel more welcome? Very important, just like it is for our students, that our families feel like this is their school community as well. This was shared to give you some themes from our different sites of what people are feeling, things that we're going to need to address and dig deeper in. And this is a slide our principals take very seriously as well, because it kind of helps them decide what shifts they need to make on their campuses and things that they need to do for their particular schools, because the responses are a little bit unique and different from school site to school site. So they take that information and incorporate that into their school plans as well. What do you think will be needed bringing students back to full in-person instruction in the fall? We've had a lot of conversations. Some of these, you'll see some themes of some things that we've been doing, some things we'll continue doing, validating some things that have been done, and just continuing to do the work, understand, and keep our community informed, and just continue to follow the safety protocols that we can to keep our students safe and on campuses. If you were in charge of school like this one, how would you try to engage more parents from your community? And this question actually came from our last survey. A few parents just say, this is what I think you need to do. So we wanted to put that question out there for those that may not have been thinking that way, to kind of hear what some of those voices are. And I think we captured a pretty good sense of what some of those varied thoughts and feelings and needs actually are. I think this information will really help our school site administrators to kind of address some of this need on a more targeted level, all the way down to the classroom level, actually. So I think this will be a very helpful question to us in planning for next year. In what ways might the school help you support your child more effectively? I actually would have loved to share lots and lots of different ideas here, but one really universal theme that came forth from families is they do want to know how to educate and support my child at school. I think while the virtual learning has been very challenging, I think the one thing it has done is really help families to realize maybe what additional tools they might need, what support they need in order to really help engage and help their students to be more successful when they're not there. They've kind of been there a little bit more during this virtual instruction, but now that they're recognizing some of the things that they need. And so as we plan our professional development, work with school sites on what we're offering, there's definitely a theme around how to help my students in reading and mathematics, just in how to keep them engaged and excited about school. And so we will be offering series around some of those topics this coming school year. And then just please share any additional comments regarding virtual learning since start of school in August 2020. We asked this question because we really wanted to, we didn't know 100% at this time where we would be. Well, but what we did know is that regardless to what was being recommended at that time, we knew that we were going to offer an option of independent study or something. So we needed to know from this past experience, again, of what we've done, we've gotten better, what's good, what's not good, so that it informs how we do that work. And also just preparing us in the future, you know, if we need to make a shift like that again. Lots of things can happen, we don't know. So we want to take this, kind of keep it in our back pocket, I guess you could say, and be able to shift to it if we need to. And some of these strategies and things will be incorporated into our independent study program for what we've learned as well. What does the school do well in helping to support your child? Again, a question to capture what's going well and what we need to do. I will be moving more rapidly through these slides because I know we have limited time this evening. So if there's questions at the end, we can definitely go back to some of those. Moving on to our student survey data, there was a question about the number of open-ended questions. We had about 5 open-ended questions for our students, both at the 3-5 and the 6-8 level. Some of those questions, as a reminder, had to do with challenges. What challenges do you have when doing schoolwork at home? What do you find most challenging about virtual learning, which we'll see in a bit? And then if you have any additional thoughts and comments about how you are feeling and learning from home, please share those with us. So those are some additional questions, but really the purpose for those questions was to get down to the school site level, classroom level, so that teachers could really engage with their students and who responded, and maybe how that will inform and help their practice as teachers. That's really the critical aspect for these questions. So the one we chose to share, because we're kind of in that point right now where we need to kind of move forward. What do you find most challenging about virtual learning? Again, wanting to inform our practice as we finished out this school year, and then as we look forward to next school year. Student well-being, gonna highlight just a few areas here. The teams will look very carefully at all data, but the way we kind of look at it always at 2-tier. We look at what we need to do right now before the end of the school year, which is why we try to offer the survey early enough that we are able to take some kind of action before school lets out. So the areas at the top of the screen where you see like the 24, the 42, 20 of those areas, those are the areas where our social worker and school site teams are reaching out to families to further understand what that means. Like, what does that mean for that group? Because that's kind of our urgent on fire group is the way we look at that. So we look at that, and then they work through the other data in a more strategic way as they look to next school year. Same thing here, we're looking at the high level of boredom. Boredom is really important because boredom leads to other things. And also defining what does that really mean? This is really a targeted question, again, getting down to the classroom level for teachers to look at that on how their students are responding and what does that mean for them in their classrooms. That's really the purpose here. Supportive relationships. This question continues to be a really important one for us. Our school sites recognize that when our students have at least one adult on the campus that they connect with, they're able to be more successful. And so this is kind of our barometer, I guess you could say, of kind of where we need to hone in. So those where we see never areas, that's our core group. And then we just kind of build upon that for our school sites. It's also the area where our MTSS teams will work with their sites on strategies on that tier 1 level. You know, what are we doing to engage our students, to engage our site community, that type of thing. That's what we're looking at here. Okay, jumping topics here a little bit, going into cultural awareness. This kind of section is kind of integrated a little bit to help it have a little bit more meaning. Some of this we talked about at our equity summit, so I won't go into too great a detail, but really the whole idea is that I think what stood out as we begin to talk about this is that our community does think it's important. They want us to be intentional and thoughtful about it, but the information is important to them. We also recognize that socio-emotional learning is important for us in our work that we're doing and information we got from this question. And then just kind of what our families need as we kind of move forward and do this work. Here we see we have some confidence as a community, so that's good. We can build upon that. And we can begin to share our opinions, work on our coaching, work on our support. But I think we're starting at a good place if we can build on that and have a gradual release as we move forward. Let's see here. I think I'm just going to move through this one. So this particular engaged at school, how often are students encouraged to think more deeply about race-related topics? This is kind of an opportunity for us to figure out a starting point. Where do we need to start from? Where are we now? And basically just continue to rebuild our system, have sustainability, not only in our schools, but also in our community. And by doing that, working on the inside and working on the outside, ultimately, hopefully we'll get that sustainability we're going to be looking for. This question is to focus on conversations and being sure that conversations are happening and what type of conversations are happening. So while some conversations are happening, we have an opportunity to increase the conversations, and our goal will be to increase the quality of the conversations and have more meaningful discussions about different topics. So that's kind of the focus here. We know developing a greater understanding regarding equity and inclusion data is critical, and sustaining our healthy dialogues is also critical to our progress as a community. So we know we want to do that. We know there's a way to do that. There's a developmental way to do that. Not all kids need the same thing at the same time. So it's being very thoughtful about that, all the way down to our preschoolers. It's about relationships. It's about connectivity. We must start there. We don't jump out. We're not going to jump out talking about race. We're going to talk about you're a human being and I want to know more about you. Keeping it very simple and working through the developmental stages as we need to for our conversations. So we look at opportunities for next year. Finding more opportunities to consider others in our daily lives will be our area of growth. Again, the conversations, building on the conversations, the type of conversations. The conversations we have with kids will be different than the conversations we have as staff. Will be different conversations we have as administrators. Those are all different types of conversations, but all those conversations will have a consistent way by which we're doing it, and maybe what the particular topics will be as we move through the work. We are positioned to increase the opportunities for these conversations as the majority of our staff are expressing a level of interest and confidence. And so basically, where will this lead us? We have great things planned. It's going to be a lot of hard work. I think even from our equity summit, some of the comments and the input that we've already gotten will continue to shape our practice. And so I think the thing that I want to end with there on the cultural information we've gotten so far is that be patient, communicate often, communicate consistently, and that'll help us all get better at this work. So now on to our student engagement. In general, how many of your students regularly participated in virtual school, virtual classes? This was just kind of to get a gauge of where we are as we were transitioning from virtual back to in-person instruction for some of our students, and also trying to gauge. You'll see don't teach virtual classes. For the most part, that's a lot of our independent study families who were responding there, just so you have some context of who's responding. In general, how engaged have students been in your virtual classes? Again, giving a sense of that. And some of the comments coming, you'll see how our staff are thinking about this. This slide tells a bit of a story and is reflective of some of the interventions and supports that have been put into place and that will continue into the fall. You'll see there's a greater bit of concern by our teams in academics, behavior, socio-emotional, relationships, relationships with adults. And I think I feel really confident in what our teams have designed in some of the plans, both at the school site level, but at the district level, because many of these things will actually flow through our school plans that are going to be happening for our school sites, but also in our LCAP plans that will be forthcoming. What do you think will be needed bringing students back to full in-person instruction in the fall? Again, you'll see some themes running through here. Some we've talked about in past presentations, and some we will continue to talk about. How can school leaders help better learn about and discuss and confront these issues? That's kind of what we're attempting to do. Look at this information, inform our practice. And so for next steps, we will continue moving forward, providing the feedback that's needed, and using the data from our plans to inform our equity lens. We'll be looking at advisory committees. One of the committees that we used to have and we kind of faded away because based upon input from families, it didn't seem as needed anymore. So for example, our special education, we have a separate kind of advisory group, but we don't have one specific for our campus, Sunnyvale School District campus. And so we haven't done that, but based upon feedback this year and other input, that'll be something that'll be coming back. We'll continue the ongoing meetings and forums of different types because the consistent feedback is that the community likes the opportunity to have conversations. And then really trying to improve our social workers working in conjunction with our outreach assistants, working on being more targeted on how and when to conduct home visits. So lots of different things that we've learned from the survey, but also just from some of the communications and opportunities that we've had. And so with that, I will take any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you so much, Tasha. If there's any members of the public who wish to comment on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. We'll give it just a minute. All right, not seeing any public comments. All right, we'll turn over to the board. Nancy?
So I appreciate the in-depth of this survey. And so I guess I'm looking at a bigger picture. What I was wondering is from our fall to our spring, do you believe that the interventions that we've done have had an impact? And so that when we see our spring numbers, those are trending better because of the informed strategies that we implemented from our fall survey to our spring survey?
I think in some areas, yes. In some areas, no. So in the areas of yes, students kind of feeling a little bit more like, for lack of a better word, hope, hope and positivity. But I think what has been consistent, which is really nice, that even though students and families have expressed a lot of frustration about having to be taught virtually, they've also had a lot of positive things to say. So they feel like efforts being made, even though it's not ideal and they don't love it and they can't wait to be back, some of them, they still feel that some connections were being made. They just want to see more of that connecting, especially as we return. They're looking for a lot more connection, a lot more opportunities to engage with one another at their school sites, but also it appears at a district level as well.
Okay. What I realize that you're going to tweak questions as we go along. Are there going to be some core questions that we're going to be continuing to ask, especially around the social emotional components, so that we can track overall our progress and strategies as a district as a whole, so that it can align with what our LCAP thoughts and ideas are over time?
Yes, good question. Prior to the pandemic, we would keep our core questions the same. But in trying to balance between not surveying our community to death, we cut some questions out to try to just keep what was most critical while we're simultaneously trying to ask other things that we needed to know. So as we move back to our fall survey, our core questions around like well-being, safe adults, safety, how do you feel on campus? Some of those core questions, those will stay the same throughout. And the only thing that would be changing would be things that came from the previous survey or things that we would need to know. But that real core piece of the social-emotional learning will stay consistent, because it is very valuable, because it does let us know how we're doing. So absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So I guess what I would also say about the food insecurity is that I appreciate that people were able to report that needs were met at the time and that they're having gradual release. Some of our families are actually having that gradual release and not needing as many supports as they did initially. I think it's a complex problem that we as a district are not always posed to be able to handle it in isolation. It's a community issue as well. So I appreciate that will inform our partners with that information about how they can better help and support families moving forward. But it seems like the numbers of people who needed support has decreased. Is that what my remembrance is? Like the 0.7% seems much lower than it was in the fall.
It is a little bit lower, and I would say diversified. Fortunately, it's not necessarily also all the same pool of families, because some families have left, some families have come in. And there's a few more opportunities on how families can kind of get access to some of the resources and food from us, but also from the community. But our teams have done a good job. I think we still have some variability in the type of food that families need. So it's not that food's not available, but what they need and also a little bit of what they want is a little bit more difficult to get access to. And so that's our kind of our uniqueness, where we really have to have individualized conversations for those, because they definitely are some unique situations. And like fresh produce, for example, is one of those. And also items that could like easily just be, maybe heated up in a microwave, or even eaten at room temperature potentially, if that's what they wanted to do. So there is some variability within that.
Right. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Was that all, Nancy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Bridget?
Okay, so first of all, I did see a lot of consistency between this report and the last one. So I want to thank you for that, because I could kind of thumb through them both and take a look at them and see, you know, kind of how we were doing. I remember from the spring, we also had a lot of similarities. So I think it's great that we're doing this survey. I had a question. You mentioned in one of the first things that you showed when you were showing the numbers of the families, the numbers changed from this first one that you gave us in terms of survey response rate. And so are you saying that, like, on our page, it says 34 out of 707, that's 34 parents out of 707 students, or out of 707 surveys that were sent? Like, did you send it to everybody?
On that one. And what I did, because I had made the adjustment at the top of the presentation, because really what we did is divided that, because that's the double survey that was going out that we talked about, but only one family member is doing it. So it ends up not being a true reflection. So we kind of split it for those surveys. So that second number now is, I think it's what, 30 whatever. That's a more authentic number to match the number of surveys that actually truly went out to a home. So that's why we're trying to figure out what's the best way to do that. And we're leaning towards just one survey to the household moving forward.
Well, so if you had 34 families and it was like, so like before it looked like there were 5% of people responding. So what you're saying is it's really more like 10%.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, you know, as far as like as far as the overall survey, like I really would like to see the answers. I'd really like to see the long form answers that people are writing in about, you know, their thoughts and their experiences, because I understand that you're giving us a summary, but like we got 10 pages of summary about the parents and we got one slide about the teachers. And I think the teachers and staff, like certificated and classified, I was looking at their surveys and there's a lot of room for them to talk about how they were doing. So, you know, I just feel like, and additionally, like even with the family survey, you know, there's how much did you do as far as, like, I understand you were summarizing with themes, but like, how much did you do where you were taking, how many outliers are on there? Like, did you include the outliers to like give them a voice, but they're really an outlier? Or like, were there a bunch of people that like how did they end up on the slide? That's what I want to know.
So
it's two different things, right?
Right, absolutely. So on the slide, because it's summary, is what we try to do is capture where there were multiple responses that had a similar type of feeling. So if you just kind of extracted it all out, they would come to a similar type of question. But none of the responses are thrown out. And that's why it's difficult to share them, because we go all the way down. So that's where school sites are taking that. So they know specifically what those comments were. At the teacher level, if there's things specific, so for example, some of the social emotional things, if a student is really like crying out on their survey, and we see that, we want to talk to that student, because we want to figure out, are they really crying out? Did they really understand the question? Are they just checking? You know, so I'll give you an example. Some of the kids we called, you know, they called and they said, well, you said you wanted someone to reach out to you. You reach out to them and they go, wow, you called. I just wanted to see if someone was going to call me. You know, so it just depends. But all the comments are really used from that standpoint. So the summary is more so for this presentation, but the actual comments get more specific as we work with school sites, because those comments are very specific to a site, specific to a student, specific to a family. And so that's why we kind of work through some of the responses in a 3-prong, which is like the things that look urgent, we try to address that as much as we can and as soon as we can. We continue working on that over the summer with our social workers who will be working and other staff. And then we try to pretty much come up with like a toolkit or a bucket for our school sites and say, hey, have you looked at your data? Most of them have, because they look at it to inform their practice. But if some things really stand out to us that are concerning or we think they need to focus on, we kind of highlight that for them to help them out so that they kind of know, so that they can address that at a school level, knowing that we will support that. So I would say all the voices are captured, but not from a presentation standpoint.
Yeah, but okay, so again, like the classified and the certificated survey, there were 11 or 12 open-ended questions on there. And are you saying that just the principals read those, that nobody, like who reads the long form answers, not the ones that are generated in the report?
Yeah.
Long form.
I read them all. Our department reads them all. The social workers, because they have confidentiality, read it. And then really at that point, it becomes the principals who are doing that. And that's just to kind of honor the confidentiality. And I'm trying to get to that so I could tell you what those questions are specifically for staff.
Yeah, on mine, one of them is not working. It just goes to the, like the certificated one works, but the other one doesn't. I mean, the classified works.
Okay.
But it's like, you know, the ones that are, you know, the ones that are really about like, I mean, I guess I just feel like, I mean, I would like to read it. I would like to read everything. So I don't know how the rest of the board feels, if they're interested in reading what people are saying, because, you know, for us, it's very hard to really, you know, we can talk to people that we talk to or come to the meetings or whatever, but, you know, as far as being representatives that are listening and hearing what people are saying, like, I think that well, I mean, I feel like I have a responsibility to listen, you know, to listen and understand what they're saying. And I'm not saying that somebody else isn't doing their job. I'm just saying that, you know, I'd like to take a look at it, and it doesn't have to have anybody's name on it or school on it. I just, you know, if you're saying like, hey, what do you think kids need for next year? I kind of like to hear what the staff is saying about it. That's, I don't know, what do the other board members think?
Nancy, did you have a thought related to this, or is it something different?
No, it's related to this. I appreciate the need to know, but I also appreciate the importance of confidentiality, especially with regards to our employees. Employees have other venues which they can utilize to get information to the board. We meet with our employee groups on a regular basis. And if there are deep concerns, that's a place where they can share collectively their thoughts. So the individual thoughts of individuals, I think I'm concerned from an HR perspective that may be a violation of confidentiality.
Even if it's redacted and there's no.
Why would I give a survey if I know everybody's going to be reading it? What if I'm doing it in confidence? There's a freedom, and you're taking away. And my perspective is that you may be taking away unintendedly a freedom of expression. And part of it also is trust in the staff and the administrators of the sites, and the level of confidence in working through those particular issues. I think if they're big issues, common themes, that's what the reporting can be indicative of, but that's a job for the superintendent.
Well,
As an individual board member, I rely on staff to inform me about my decision making. And I rely on the processes. I trust that if there's big issues that they'll be reported. So I don't need to have everybody's individual information, scan and review that to validate how we're doing. But that's my big picture perspective.
well, and you know, I just to say, add one more quick thing before. Let me just clarify. This is not because I don't trust what people are saying or other the principals are reading this. I didn't even know who read it, so I understand Tasha reads it and the social workers read it and the principals read it. Okay, so I think that, you know, just like there's a incidence of where people are going to fill out a survey, they might not fill out a survey. They might not fill it out if they don't think anybody's reading it. Like maybe they're expecting us to read it. So I just, you know, this is not like me saying I don't think somebody's doing their job. I'm just telling you, I am really interested in the paragraphs, the 10, 12 paragraphs that, like, in some cases entire schools wrote about their reflection on this year. And it's not being hypercritical, and it's not, you know, it's not meant to be a criticism of the staff or anything. And it's not meant to be down in the weeds. It's just meant to be like, I'm interested in hearing what people are saying.
Yeah, if I can jump in, I appreciate that, Bridget. Actually, I appreciate both points of view. I would just say the way the survey is currently constructed is not for to create a public report. So, you know, we could have there's some options available. So, for example, if we decided that we wanted to make the entire report available. If we were to make it available for any board member, we have to make it available to the whole public. That's just sort of the way that works. If we were to do that, then we would have to change the nature of the questions significantly. Now, another option might be to have some questions that people did know were public. So we could just state that, like, these questions will be public. These are confidential, these are public. Something like that. So, I mean, that might be a middle ground, because I understand I get it. Like you want to know what people are thinking. So that might be an option. But again, that would require a revision of the survey. But as it is right now, I mean, staff believes pretty firmly that we shouldn't, you know, release all the answers, just because we could redact them all, but it would take an enormous amount of time. And that's not really the purpose of the survey as this one's constructed, but we could look at something in the future where there's other questions.
Well, I would just say then that, like, to have 10 slides, like almost one for every long form question for the families, and to not do that for the staff, I feel I don't understand that at all. So,
Can I respond?
So that's, yeah, that's kind of a different question a little bit. Yeah,
sure.
Go ahead.
I mean, if you're going to say this is a balanced report.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. The reason that was presented this way is I was choosing the questions that was informing where we are in our work and what we needed to do. So, for example, I'm just going to go to a staff question that is not there. You know, what is the most important thing your school can keep doing to support students of different races, ethnicities, and cultures? Some of their responses may get very specific. It may call out people. That's just not something I think it's appropriate for a public report when they're trying to engage their school community. So it's questions like that. What do you want to tell me that I'm not doing well? You know, they're going to call potentially names out and people. And I just want to honor that space. And so that's why some of those questions were not there, just to kind of avoid some of that, because it's not as theme driven, because it's very specific based upon their campuses and the district and things like that. So it's not a matter of trust. It's just that a discomfort because that wasn't conveyed, that would be presented in a public forum in that way.
All right, I think Isabel, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Yes, so the questions, the notes then from the children and the questions that are not there is because they are, you can identify the people who made them, and we're gonna be knowing their private suggestions or criticizing directly a person. That, I mean, there are no more things that we can learn without bringing up who say them or why, or putting somebody on the line. That's what you're saying.
Yes and no. So we take who said them away, but some of their comments will point to a particular person at school, the school, things like that. And so as you're going through, you want to catch it all, but you might miss some. And I would hate to miss some and then call someone out specifically, good or bad, you know, because you don't want to celebrate someone, but you didn't celebrate the other 5 or 6 comments that someone else said just because of how it was worded. So it's also an equity issue, I feel. So it's confidentiality, but it's also equity.
But for the as far as the having 10 on the families, and
I can definitely summarize more. That was really a time. Yeah, that was more of a programmatic decision. Yeah, but we can definitely summarize some of those for you. That's not a problem.
Okay, and then I do think, you know, in the after the fall survey, we did get a follow-up number, which I requested, but you know, it's a short week or maybe it's coming. But I really think it's important to understand the food numbers by school as students reported it, because you know we don't have the students are we had a pretty high percentage of students reporting, and you know last year, I mean, Bishop was like, you know, 30% of their students were saying they were hungry. And that was when they were doing distance learning for the most part. Now they're back in school. I'm nervous about summer, honestly. And you know, how we're handling food services next year. And I appreciate we're talking about partnerships, and Sunnyvale Community Services and Second Harvest Food Bank are wonderful. But you know, I would really love to see, you know, that every child in our district, I mean, because if we're saying 5 to 10% of our kids, like 5%, it was like 5% of our middle schoolers were reporting that they were hungry, and 10% of our elementary school kids were reporting that they were hungry because there wasn't enough food in the home. We have food services, we have student services, like we have all these new programs and incentives and things. All of the schools around us are doing different things. Like, let's try to make sure that every kid in our district can show up ready to learn, and you know, and get a breakfast if they need it, and take food home and get those dinners and snacks and stuff. Like, we just really, you know, I mean, I am just so I don't know how we can say that we're going to support kids socially and emotionally if we're not going to make sure that they have a meal. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. So, and you know, the teams are wonderful, the people are wonderful. We just have to reimagine how they're going to work together to go after and attack this. So board, I mean, last time we said, like, let's get more food out to people. I just really would love to see the numbers of how things are going at each school. And you know, board, last time we said we want to increase our food and have the things come out, you know, have take advantage of the programs and stuff. And I've been seeing, like, I don't know, at this point it's like the district is doing similar things, right? So does this come into our goals for next year? Like, when do we discuss this?
So you want me to answer part of that question that I can't answer? I can't.
Sure.
Okay, the first portion about the food and the numbers by that, we can definitely do a deeper dive on that and come back with some additional information. That's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was going to say that maybe, and we won't be ready by tomorrow, or maybe in one of the weekend reports to kind of get those numbers and how it compares to last fall, right? Like, is about the same number of students or less students, kind of seeing that difference in future report would be helpful. I think this isn't a food discussion, right? This is just a presentation on
Right.
Panorama survey.
I'm asking the board, like, this is where Nancy has been before, and the said like, hey, don't talk to the district, talk to the board. So board, I'm asking us, when can we discuss this this new information that came out as a data point and all our other data points that we've had? When can we discuss this as far as looking forward to next year? Because I think we need to get some clarity around expectations and possibilities.
So to clarify, go ahead, Isabel.
No, that I thought that we were also gonna talk about it during the next item. But yeah, I thought it would be important to know, the comments from the students about food, because it's part of what we did last time, and see how it has been advancing. Apparently the parents are feeling better about it, but we don't know what the kids say about it. Or if it was asked also. And also we just have 20% of the parents in comparison with almost 80% of the kids. So we have a bigger pool there to have a better understanding of the situation with the general basic needs from the kids, among other answers. So that's why I thought it would be interesting to know as much as we can from this. But I understand the part about confidentiality and privacy, but if we can get more or as more as we can without, breaking confidentiality or putting anyone in trouble with their employers, definitely that's not what we want. But if we can get a bigger picture of what is happening, it will be great. I mean, as we already have the data, we can use it and make decisions from that.
From a practical perspective, we only have one other meeting scheduled for this month. We don't have any meetings scheduled for July. And
would that be during the superintendent?
August is the next time. And what you're asking for is a broader discussion, which is a study session. So
well, I'm asking if it's going to be is it going to be part of the superintendent goals, or is it like?
This wouldn't, under the Brown Act, this wouldn't be the time to decide that. But we could, under superintendent's evaluation, later in the meeting.
Okay. Okay. That was my big thing about that.
Okay, is there any other questions or comments from other board members about the presentation? Okay, looks like not any others. I just had two. One was a follow-up from when Nancy was sharing that idea about, are there I had the same question, like, are there, there are some questions we've had to ask specifically, but making sure we have some core questions, right, to kind of gauge, right, like how we're doing. And I'm hoping, I mean, I don't know if they have to change, but I'm hoping, especially since we're really now getting a chance to dive more into the equity work. And, a lot of those questions were related to also, as part of equity, it's one piece of it, but discussions about race is a piece of that. And so a lot of those questions were about, race conversations on campus. Are those ones that you guys are planning to continue those to kind of see how we're doing? Like, are we making improvements? Are people feeling like it's more comfortable to talk about? It's being talked about? You're nodding your head, so you're saying yes, those will be some of the core. Okay, awesome.
Those will be a part of our core, and trying to be sure that we've asked the right questions. So if we tweak it, we might tweak it, but we do want to continue to ask those questions so we can see how we're doing and also what we need to do more of potentially. So.
Yeah. So keeping them similar enough that we can compare, but then maybe getting more information that we need.
Yes.
Awesome. And then, sorry, I made lots of different notes. I got to find my other question. So then my other question is, I was just thinking of it when you were presenting. So you had mentioned that when you were talking about the student results that, that then teachers look at those, the student results. So I'm just a little bit curious, just like the general, like how is the information presented? Like, is it bundled and it's given to a teacher? Like, does like a coach or principal say, hey, here's some of your data? Like, I'm just kind of curious a little bit how that information kind of gets to teachers and how they're able to use it.
Right. The way it functions is we have a survey side of the platform, but we have what's called Student Success Platform. And the way that functions is it functions as an intervention portal for us, if you will. So teachers are able to see their students, but when they see their students, they not only get to see the socio-emotional survey data that they've reported on, but they get to look at their attendance, they get to look at behavior, they get to look at their academics there. And so that also is a way for our MTSS teams to kind of have a place to look at data to see how students are doing. We also are utilizing that now to integrate some of our intervention works and attendance plans and other things that we're doing with students. So that way other teachers who might be sharing students can see what's happening there and kind of dialogue on that. Some of our attendance teams are looking at that, so we can have groups of students potentially who have attendance issues. So it does a nice job of giving them just who they need, but then they can also manipulate their dashboard in a way that helps them inform their practice as a teacher. It also helps them by, it has a playbook attached to it. So let's say your classroom for some particular, when you see that they're having maybe lack of grittiness or just having some socio-emotional themed needs, they can kind of see that over their classroom, and they may decide to offer a particular theme lesson from the playbook. And that playbook actually integrates with Second Step, which is a SEL curriculum that we have across the district. So it acts as a teaching tool, but it also informs the teacher about students in the classroom. So that's kind of how that functions. And it's kind of has graphs, it has other things that they can do, but it's designed to kind of be simple so that the teacher can use it and it inform their practice.
Great.
What is that platform? What is that called?
Student Success. It's a part of Panorama, but it's called the Student Success Platform.
Thank you for sharing that. And I just wanted to share that I appreciated just kind of having the snapshot and getting, getting a glimpse of what stuff. And I appreciate all the dives that you're doing. And it was nice to hear, right, those students who are, most critical, that they are being reached out to and connecting. And it's nice to know, right, that it's not just these questions, feel good questions, right, but that we're doing stuff with it and really trying to meet the needs of our students and families. So thank you so much for the presentation and for the work. And I know there's people behind you who are helping make it all work. So thank you to everybody. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we'll be coming back with kind of additional information later based upon our follow-up too. So you'll be getting those updates in one form, and Dr. Gallagher will let me know how we're going to do that, but you will be getting those updated informations as well.
That's great. Thank you so much. All right, board, do we want to do our break now or do one more item and then have our break? Where are we at? Go a little longer before we do our break? Okay. We are on to item 8A, the public hearing review and discuss the 2021 local control and accountability plan. And I believe we're turning it over to Mala.
Yes, thank you. And here it is. Okay, so I bring to you a new 3-year LCAP plan for review, discussion, and public hearing. In a relatively brief time span, I'm going to do my best to do justice to the depth of thought and work that has gone into putting this plan together. And I would like to start with sharing my appreciation to everyone who has helped work on it, as this is most definitely a team effort, with each of us bringing in different lenses to the goals and the actions in the plan. So as is our commitment, the plan has been written through our 3 lenses of focus: equity, MTSS, which is to improve effectiveness of instruction and student supports, and the recovery, renewal, and reimagining. Before I go there, I'd also like to point out that this plan in no way encompasses each and everything that we do at each and every level. It is a guiding document that has been designed to specifically support certain populations that include English learners, students from a low socioeconomic background, and foster youth. That has been spelled out by the state. The site plans, which you will be reviewing in the fall, are the ones that are aligned to these overarching goals and will contain specific site actions that target school site community needs. So what is the LCAP? So as I mentioned, it's a 3-year plan. It describes goals, actions, services, and expenditures to support positive student outcomes with a specific focus on the groups that I mentioned. And we have some very specific state priorities that have to be embedded. And it's an opportunity for us also to share how, what, and why we've chosen certain programs and services to meet our specific student needs across Sunnyvale. So what's included in the plan? I mean, it's, as you must have definitely gone through and seen, it's a pretty hefty document that's broken up into segments. So one is the budget overview for parents. We have a section that really goes deeper into the stakeholder engagement, because that's an important part of how this plan has been put together and how they've influenced the plan and some of our goals and actions. We have our 5 goals and several actions. And then a specific section where we have to specify what are the increased and improved services for these target groups, because there are many goals and actions that are applicable to all, but there has to be a specific focus on these target populations. And then a learning, the LCP, which was what we had put in place last year, and the update, the annual update on that. And then there's a plan summary, which is not required, but we think is really helpful for people to look at the plan at a glance and just go through what our different priority areas are. So I mentioned the state priorities, and rather than go through each and every one of them in detail, what I will do is at a glance just show you this slide about the 8 priorities that we have embedded, incorporated in our LCAP. And as I go through the goals and actions, I'll align them to the appropriate state priority that has been addressed. And you're definitely going to notice an overlap, because there is one. I mean, there's student engagement goes with student achievement. We know that. So there will be an overlap, but I will address it as we go along. So I'm not going to read out every single word that's on our screen, but this is our goal. This is a broad goal. And the priority that this encompasses is includes basic services. And basic services is to provide all students with access to fully credentialed teachers in their subject area, to provide student access to instructional materials that align with state standards, and a safe, properly maintained school facility. So these are the broad categories that are embedded in this goal of ours. We also have included the priority of the implementation of state standards, which ensures that school programs and services access California's academic content and performance standards in all the Common Core standards areas for English language arts, for math, for the next generation science standards, and English language development standards. So I will broadly describe some of our actions, which you have in front of you. So we have hiring highly qualified teachers, increasing the diversity of our staff across all the bargaining units. We have we have about 4 actions that are committed to the instructional materials access. As you may know, we have adopted the next generation science curriculum at the elementary level, but the middle school was all set to do so before the pandemic hit. So we hit pause, and we're going to now commit ourselves to what the middle school science adoption will be next year. Conversely, the history social studies curriculum has been adopted by the middle school, but at the elementary level, we do not have aligned to this framework. So we're going to be piloting and adopting that next year. The math timeline is a little more prolonged. So the new math framework only comes out this November, which means we're not going to have instructional materials available for another 2 school years. And we do not want to wait another 2 years to get in line with the depth of understanding and conceptual knowledge in math that students need. So we have a robust set of supplemental curriculum that we will bring to you for approval at a subsequent meeting. But we have that embedded in our goals. And then some appropriate intervention curriculum in both math and ELA to meet IEP goals that are directly aligned with the California Common Core state standards. In addition, providing access to technology, including devices, applications, lessons on digital citizenship and cybersecurity are embedded in this goal, and also maintenance of district facilities. Would you like me to just go through all 5 goals and then we can have questions at the end? Would that work? Okay. Thank you. As a teacher, it's very hard for me to just keep talking for like 20 minutes straight, but I will do my best. Goal 2. So this goal is the priority that is embedded in this is student achievement, which asks to improve achievement and outcomes for all students, which is measured in multiple ways, test scores being one of them, English proficiency is another, and college and career preparedness is the next. So some of the actions that are integrated in this goal are to deepen our work with data analysis so that we can truly target instruction to meet student needs. This is done in a variety of ways and includes a variety of personnel, teachers, instructional coaches, administrators, all of us. Continuing our focus on foundational literacy, and the target grade level this year is going to be 3rd grade, and all teachers new to the grades that were previously trained in foundational literacy, which was TK through 2nd. We've have an action on how we can use the school libraries and the role of our school librarians to support our work with literacy. And we're so excited to have a support teacher for equitable outcomes at every elementary school site, and an equivalent FTE at both the middle schools divided between ELA and math to really support our students in a more direct way. We continue to promote STEM activities, and then our new middle school schedules at both sites have been adjusted to provide equitable access to students receiving English language instruction and resource support, as well as is inclusive of the new Juntos cohort at Columbia Middle School. Goal 3 is one that you've just heard a whole presentation around, and it encompasses 2 state priorities: school climate, which factors both inside and outside the classroom that impact student success. That's health, safety, discipline, school connectedness. And in part, this is measured by suspension and expulsion rates and surveys of student teachers and parents. We just heard one of the results of the survey. Student engagement is another priority that we know is really important. And that includes providing students with engaging programs and coursework that keeps them in school, as measured in part by attendance rates, dropout rates, and doesn't apply to us, but graduation rates for the high school. Under this goal, some of our actions include training and support for trauma competent care with SEL embedded PD with the goal of improving school climate. There will be SEL and CRT, culturally relevant teaching curriculum and resources used consistently across the district. I think that's something we've been talking about and you've definitely asked for as well. Additional support staff have been hired. We're looking forward to having an equity coach to support the current SEL coach that we have, who we can't clone, unfortunately. And in addition, we have 2 more social workers that are being added. The Panorama survey is going to be ongoing, and there's a focus on MTSS across the board to really be inclusive of not just academics, but also social emotional learning, behavior, and attendance, really focusing on the whole child. In goal 4, the state priority that we are focusing on here is parent involvement, whereby efforts by the school district and schools to seek input from all parents and to engage parents in decision making. So we just don't want to get their input, we want to engage them in at a decision making level, as well as promoting parent participation in programs that meet the needs of not just their students, but all students in the district. Some of our actions here include parent education activities at the site level that are specifically targeted to the site's community needs. We value our partnerships deeply, and we definitely intend to continue with them. Communication we know is key, and this will continue to be done through a variety of methods. And also we're committed to providing culturally responsive resources to families to further support them in the work that we are engaged in. Last but not least, this one is, our focus goal that shines a spotlight on our multilingual students and their families, and in some way or another encompasses and addresses all the priorities that I've mentioned before. So in addition to instruction, which is through the designated and integrated ELD, our focus is on serving newcomers in a more robust and consistent way across the district. The other target population within this group are students who are either at risk or already in the category of being long-term English learners. So long-term English learner, as you may know, is a formal classification given to students who've been enrolled in US schools for more than 6 years, who are not progressing towards English proficiency, and who are struggling academically due to their limited English skills. So we know, I think we can all agree that this is almost an unconscionable consequence to have students who we've been serving since kindergarten reach middle school and still not be proficient in English. So we're really going to double down on our efforts to examine root causes, look at what their needs are. And as we are all aware, there's only so much we can do at a very narrow focus level. And this is the target group that we have chosen to work with this year based on data. So some other supports include the bilingual paraprofessional staff that supports in the classroom, and of course, our amazing bilingual outreach liaisons that we value so highly. We value all our staff, but they've just been outstanding during the pandemic in doing the outreach to the families, and we really appreciate them. Parent engagement is definitely, and advisory is definitely embedded in our site English Learner Advisory Committees, the ELAC, and at the district level in the DLAC. Extended learning opportunities are an important component of the plan, and this will look different at each site, with some examples in the plan that include KLAS and summer school, and we also have before and after school opportunities, which will differ site to site based on staff availability, student needs, and what is possible. So I wanted to share a bit of the timeline. This is where we are, June 3rd, where we have a public hearing, and we're bringing this to you for discussion. And after it is approved on June 17th, then we submit the final copy to the LCAP advisory services at the Santa Clara County of Education. And between June and July, they do a final review of our plan. And if there's any additional clarification, we receive that by the middle of August. August 15th is a target date. So that's the whole trajectory of the work that's gone behind putting this plan together. And I am happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability. And I may have to call a friend in the audience for some of the goals or actions that they may have helped contribute to, so they can address them more thoroughly than I may be able to.
Thank you, Mala. Before we have a discussion with the board, we need to do the public hearing, and then we'll have that discussion. So I now, at 8:38, I call our public hearing for the 2021 Local Control and Accountability Plan. So if there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. And because it's a public hearing, we'll wait a little bit longer than normal. All right, last call if there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item. All right, not seeing any, I close this public hearing at 8:39. And now we will have board questions and comments. Isabel?
by the way, I was, who's just thinking that you say like, well, let's take a little bit longer and do one more item. Like, this is the biggest item tonight. Let's the whole thing. Anyway, I do appreciate, I can see all the hundreds of pages of very well thought work put on the LCAP. And it's, and I see that the goals reflect what we've been talking for actually months, not just the last time when we asked about that. There is a lot there, and there is a lot of content. I do, but sorry, have a few comments and a few things that I think will be important to somehow reflect there. A lot of, I think all of these we have are things that I talk and many people in the board talk for the last few months. But one of them, again, is, we talk a lot about the basic needs and the food. And I was thinking that is not reflected directly anywhere in not just the goals, but somewhere in the action plans, because we've been talking that, if there is a 10% or a 5% in different ages of the population who feels like, insecure about that, that's how can we teach them? And that is a big part. This is kind of an important chunk of our population, and are also the populations that are more challenged. Definitely are the most challenged kids, are important to take care of them from the LCAT. That's actually the place where we are taking care of that. I know that we do have a lot of other partners that are helping as part of the community, but a lot of the schools are, being active about these other districts. And also we have, by the schools, we have federal money that is, they are not just giving it to the community, they're giving it to the schools so the schools can feed the kids. So they're making it also part of our goals. So I think that somewhere in the action plans, I'm thinking probably in the goal one, one of the items that you mentioned should be as part of our goal as a basic thing, make sure that, as part of the equity and as part of the whole child, attending the needs. If there is an urgent need for food, it needs to be attended. Like, we cannot forget and making it part of our action plans, even more now that we are having at least 1 year, and we don't know if it might change. Also, California give it for longer later on, of food by the, given to the kids, free food given to the kids. We need to make sure that we are not forgetting that is an important part, and it's important part if we want to feed their brains, we need to feed their bodies too before they can learn. Also, we talk a lot about equity. You guys have been talking even way before I came here. It's been part of the goals, everything.
Isabel, can we pause there? Because I don't want to lose the thought. Hang on to that thought. And I want to ask Mala a follow-up question about food, creating a action under goal 1 around food. So Mala, what elements would we need to, Mala's sort of the expert on this stuff in creating.
It might be somewhere else, but I think it should be mentioned somewhere. Yeah. Maybe I saw that goal 1 kind of fit because, it's the equity part and the whole child, if you think it's another goal, but somewhere there might be in the action plan, because I think it's important.
What would we have to include in an action to make it pass mustering?
What I'd like to suggest, I didn't want to interrupt, but thank you for bringing that out. What I would like to suggest is possible, because like I mentioned, the school plans are the ones that aligned to the district LCAP plan, which is a broader one that's based on our state priorities. The school plans have a little more localized priorities that they can address. And we know different schools have different needs as far as the food insecurity is concerned. So that might be somewhere where we can embed that in. Because then that's the work that's done with the outreach liaisons, with the community services, to ensure that. So that's one possibility. Because our goal is to get that to in the hands of the students and the families, right? But I appreciate the suggestion.
Another suggestion, I heard a lot of sites, maybe not everybody, has some sort of anti-racist and anti-bigotry in general, as we are also on the Pride Month also. But we do have embedded into the system, and it's happening here and there. But I do think that we need a base, and a strong base of, a minimum base of anti-racist, anti-bigotry, anti-hate training for everybody in the district, because that will reflect into the kids and the community. You guys should decide what it is, the base, then every side can go farther in one point or another, or model it to whatever it is. But I think we should specify that it's important to us as an equity, with an equity focus, that everybody has some training. This is the basic. I mean, put a baseline for everybody, and then every side can top of that. Every team can do something special, but we should have, a base level on that somewhere as part of our main goals. I don't know if in an action plan is inside of one of the goals, but, put it as, this is important to us, and we want to make sure that everybody periodically, I don't know what periodically is, every few years, every year, you guys will tell us what periodically should be, but there should be something that we make sure that everybody in the district has some training and sensibility about that.
A question on that, Isabel. So we have an action that says that there will be SEL and culturally relevant teaching curriculum and resources that are used consistently across every site. Would that meet your stated purpose?
Pardon? Sorry?
No, I
think wasn't saying you're saying SEL?
And CRT, the culturally relevant teaching, which embeds the anti-racist and anti-bias work, because that is one of the actions. I'm asking if that would meet your stated.
Okay, the CR, I don't know if that one is, if you say that's the same as anti-racism, I just didn't get the feeling that it was the same, but it's like, it's more directly that you say equity. What it means is anti-racist is actually a, stand-up kind of policy, or don't ignore it, move forward kind of policy.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and then, I know that this was also answering the questions from the package. Wasn't one of my questions, but I did talk about this last meeting that I heard from ELD that, well, I'm telling it because it was mentioned as one of the 10 items on the goal 5, or 12 items in goal 5. English 3D, which apparently is very good for smaller kids, but after they've seen it for 2 or 3 years, they don't want to use it anymore. So as we are specifying there a particular program, we might need to specify something for the upper grades, or for people who has been the same curriculum for 2 years. After the 3rd year, they don't want it anymore. Another parallel program that might work, and people who want to use, because I heard that middle schools don't want to use that anymore because kids get bored of it, or I don't know, it's only for little kids. And it's specifically there, so I thought that then maybe we need to specify the other one, whatever it is that you guys think is the best. As an expert, you may recommend, but we need another option too.
We will. And we have a process whereby we get this curriculum, and we really do it very organically through our teachers. And we have a middle school English Learner Action Team committee that comprises of teachers from both middle schools. So that's the group that we would have this conversation with, get their feedback on, and then move forward. But we can definitely add in the plan that we will embark on a process to explore the viability of that curriculum and then move in that direction. So thank you for your 3 suggestions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bridget, are you okay if I just do a quick follow-up with that last one, and then I'll turn over to you? So I just wanted to follow up just briefly. So that my question wasn't, I had a question about that, but I think in the packet review, it didn't connect to that action item. So I think there was like confusion on what it was. So that was what when I asked, how do we know if this resource is making a difference for EL students and like what's like our clear expected outcome like with it, it was specifically for that one. So I think, right, just that like, right. So I have no problems necessarily, but just wanting to kind of, I said, I think a meeting or two ago, right? I really want to get back to the like, okay, like let's make sure what we're doing is working, right? So like how are we, and I didn't see in there like how we're measuring it. So similar to Isabel, I just wanted to echo like making sure that we're finding out like, is this effective? Is this making a difference? Right? Because and just being able to see that would be like a helpful piece. Okay, go ahead, Bridget.
Okay, I just had a couple things. I'm really excited about so many things in this plan. So you know, the sharing of resources and other things. I had a question about action 2 on goal 1, where it talks about increasing our district's diversity in our employees and stuff. And I was just wondering, like, do we already have metrics on that? And like, is there a goal we're trying to increase it to, or is it just like,
I see Jeremy's face just popped up.
I didn't even have to phone a friend. Here.
He just showed up.
Good evening. Yes, so every action has a metric that's tied to it. So our metric for this year, and this is new exciting work, I like to point out, and the equity work that the board has kind of given our direction has really excited human resources. And so this opportunity to increase the recruitment and retention and focus on staff diversity, the metric we're using is to have our staff and staff rate, ethnicity and demographics as self-identified really match the workforce, hire a workforce that matches the district student population. So we had a good conversation about just what metric to tie it to, and interestingly enough, Santa Clara County has a diverse population, but then even the city of Sunnyvale has slightly different than it is to our students. So we tied to the students that we are serving and trying to make progress toward having our staff match that. That's our first attempt at a metric to have better serve our community. That's about as far as we've gotten, because this is our first take at this. So.
And does that include support staff, or are you primarily looking at teaching staff? Does it look at everyone? Do you break it down at all, or?
Right now, we haven't broken down to classification. It's our staff as a whole, and I think that's as we get better at this in years 2 and 3, we can really refine that focus. But I think it's the more granular you get, though, the harder it is, because then we're maybe dangerously close to quotas or something to that effect. So we're really trying to take a broad swipe and a good look. So.
Thank you. So I also had a thought about the food thing. I think the school site plans, are often written they vary a great deal site to site as about how much detail is in there. And so I think, I do agree with Isabel that if under goal 1, there could be some mention of, even if we say that we'll be doing it in the site plans, like it would just be, I don't know what's legal, right? Like this seems very similar to like an IEP to me. It's like the IEP of the school district, where it's a legal document, it gets checked on, there's lots of rules around it. And I mean, that's an oversimplification of an analogy, but it just seems like, I understand that you have to be careful what you put in it, but like it would be, I don't know where else we'd be tracking it at a district level. Like maybe that would be some other kind of a goal we would create. It's hard for me to understand when we're talking about groups that are English learners, students who are economically disadvantaged, foster and homeless youth. So much goes in here. Then we also do other things, like how do we decide like maybe that's just a question of in general. You could just really briefly answer, like, how do you decide what goes in? I know in one of the questions I wrote in, they said, well, that's a great idea, but it isn't part of our LCAP process, so we might not be able to include it. Like, what are the rules for including action items into here for the plan?
Okay, I'll tell you broadly what the rules are, that we have to address the state priorities. So that's our guideline. So the state priorities, I can show you that slide again, or you have it with you. It has to address all those sub bullets under that. Somewhere in the plan, we have to embed all those. But our plan is also telling our own story, and we can add in things that are local priorities in addition to the state priorities. So there's no objection to, there's nothing that we can't put in if that's what our students need. So that's not an issue. We could add that in. When we put the plan together, we really look at that framework of the priorities. We look at what's feasible also. So we can write an amazing story, but we also want to make sure it's something that's actionable and doable. And this is a 3-year plan. So is everything going to be accomplished in year 1? Absolutely not. We know that. But it's our goal for where do we want to be in 3 years. And then every year we provide an annual update and say, okay, this is what we accomplished. Here's what we've kept because, wow, it's making a difference. Here's what we absolutely know is not helping much. So we're changing. Could be English 3D, like as a possibility, right? So we found something else. We've used all these supplemental math curricula, but these 2 are really good. This one isn't working for our students based on data. So that's what the update is about. So we're not tied, so hard and fast for 3 years doing exactly this, whether it's working or not. And that's the process. It's definitely evolving.
Okay, I just had 2 more things. So, or just 1 or 2 more things. So the other thing was in goal 1, there is a component that's a facilities component. And, when we started the facilities master plan, which I'm very disappointed we had to abruptly halt. But, I happened to be in the section of people who were from special education, and they were talking about the importance of the location of their rooms and the feeling of their rooms and the capacity of their rooms and everything like that. And, I remember from being a teacher at Fairwood when a new room I was in one of the, I called it a trailer. I know everyone's like, it's a portable. It's not a trailer. Yeah, it was a trailer, but it was a portable. So I was in a portable. And when when a new room became available, boy, did we have our eyeballs on that, that was very exciting for us. So I was just wondering that, when we think about the students that are served through special education or served through our ELD or EL support classes, or, where we have groups of kids that are in these special groups, maybe it's our counseling offices or something. I just wonder if we could add some language into the facilities work that we will be looking at, later with our equity team, equity walks, whatever, but district wide, we want to make sure that our students who are in those special groups that are protected in this plan have equal facilities to other people, or adequate, or whatever the right word is. Equal is not the right word, but have what they need and are not second-class citizens, basically. And I know that it could go school to school, but I was just hoping that we could put it in our plans so that it's something that we track over the next 3 years in general, because I know it takes time. People have to shift and move and do other things. And, Ellis is undergoing a full remodel, and we're going to do our master plan. But is that something that would be appropriate for the LCAP, or do you feel, Nancy's shaking her head no, but what do you think, Mala?
It's at a very micro level, is what I would suggest. And I'm sure I know I do, that our school sites are the envy of many districts because we have amazing facilities overall. The upkeep that we have maintained and just the facilities we have are amazing. This a particular goal is for just having basic services. So everyone has a classroom with desks and chairs and furniture and materials, right? That's kind of what the LCAP is making sure that meets the basic services criteria, which is the Williams complaint, to really support against that. That's what it's for. Am I against making sure that we don't have special ed classes like way at the back of the campus, or any of those support services where students are traveling a lot, be isolated? I fully support that, Bridget. I just don't know that it belongs in the plan, but it belongs in our work with the equity focus. Absolutely. That's my take on it.
Okay. And then my last thing that I had, let me just double check and make sure that's my last one. Yeah, my last comment and question was about, at CMS, they have sheltered science, right? And I don't know what the ratio is that they have that there. And at SMS, they have Spanish for heritage speakers. So like at each school, there's an opportunity for students to speak in Spanish and learn high register academic language. But I don't see that like kind of codified here. And it seems like that was like a very intentional strategy. So I'm wondering if like that would belong in the, even though it's things that the individual schools are doing, because it is a strategy for English learners that we're doing at that middle grade level, is that an intentional thing that we are doing, or is that something that has just sort of evolved over time and it's a tradition, or it's something like that? Like, where do those kinds of programs for our English learners, whether they're newcomers or whether they have they're heritage speakers, it's their first language, where, and plus we have Juntos, which is like a whole different thing, but like, where does that fit into the LCAP versus it's just something we do?
I think that's a really good point. And, as we are addressing, I think one of the things I shared earlier is we can only chunk out the services and supports into what's doable and actionable. So I think we've started in that trajectory with having just the whole course schedule changes at the middle schools to make sure the Juntos cohort is welcomed and incorporated, and English learner students and resource students have access to electives. So that's a start. That's a step in that direction. Things evolve over time. So it's not as though maybe someone said, I don't know, 10 years ago that this, I don't think that's the case. It just, they had the group of students, this was feasible. There was a teacher who was very interested in teaching science, sheltered science. It just became a thing at one school, not another. So is it time to take a very mindful look at equity of access across both schools for our students? Absolutely it is. And that, could be at the end of, as we are getting into what does this new schedule look like for the schools, look into now what else could we look at a deeper level, and then go at a deeper level, right? I think that's our goal, is kind of one step at a time towards that equity of access plan that you're mentioning.
Because I think at each school that I get the sense that it fills a similar need. It gives the kids the high register academic language in a subject in their heritage language. And so, I'm not opposed that they're, different in some way, but I just was wondering, like, at what point would it be captured in the LCAP as an actual strategy? Is it too small? Is it part of something else that could be captured somewhere, so that we don't lose track of this piece that we're developing?
I think what I'm hearing you ask, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the intentionality behind the course offerings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Okay. So I think that's a really good point that you make, and I think that's something we can work towards. And if I don't know if this is the right time to do it at this point, but we can definitely have that as a consideration when we're reviewing and then coming up with new actions for our next step. Thank you, Bridget.
Thank you.
Nancy?
I appreciate all the questions that the board members have had about the LCAP and what role the LCAP has as a touch point for documentation. But the LCAP is a rolling process for only 3 years. I'd rather capture things in our equity plan that has more focus. I'd rather be a little bit more broad in the LCAP construct that allows for the journey of exploration, and then the validation of the work that is being done that will eventually show we tried this, but that didn't work, and so we're going in that direction rather than being so prescriptive as to one right way. Because we know that, and I think that, you know, looking at the school site plans can be an opportunity for doing deeper work. I think the equity plans can be an opportunity for doing the deeper work. And this is kind of like a strategic, a broader focus for direction over a series of several years. So it's really hard to determine exactly where our values get reflected into this, but I think there are some other places where we can do this and have a different discussion of those touch points, and have them codified in ways that will probably have more meaningful accountability and action for the processes and work that staff is doing. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Bridget, did you have a quick follow-up? You're still muted.
The LCAP is where the money is, and it's followed by the state, you know, and so all the things in the LCAP are tied to money. And, you know, this is our one and only opportunity to talk about this. And I think that we've had other discussions as a board where we've been told over and over by everybody, like, just wait, Mala's coming. Mala's going to give you the whole thing, and we're going to talk about it with Mala. So I think that's why, you know, I noticed that when Isabel was talking, she was pretty careful to bed her questions under the goals and under the actions that were already there. And I also tried to do that as well. So I just want to state that even though we do have other opportunities, this is a big document with money attached to it that's tracked, that's like a legal document that the state is going to scrutinize. So I want to make sure that where we have like possibly a minute opportunity to comment, that this is it, you know, like, even though it's 9 o'clock at night, it's like, this is it. And then we're not going to talk about it until we get the update. You know, we'll talk about bits and pieces, and we will continue to have the conversation about equity in tons of other ways. And I'm super excited about it. And I totally agree. But I just, in defense of my comments and making them, this was it. So
I just want to be clear, I've lived up to your expectations of Mala's going to come with all. We did our best. The team did
it.
I was curious, Jeff, if you had anything to add or ask.
No, not this time. Thank you.
And as I say, you did come with, I mean, wrap around all the stuff that we've been talking for many months, and we do appreciate that.
I do appreciate the feedback.
But yes, again, it's, you know, it's like we make sure that, because it is like the IEP, that's something that my kid had an IEP, so it's something that I understand. It's like, if it's not written there, we don't know if the intentionality is behind. So that's why we wanted to make sure that we have the commas and the apostrophes where they're supposed to go.
The process is that all the suggestions, the comments are going to be, written out. I'm going to be listening to the recording because I couldn't write and listen at the same time. So we'll go through the whole list. As many as can be incorporated in the plan will be done so and brought to you on the 17th for adoption. And some will be just recorded and a follow-up will be, shared with you of what's feasible.
Yeah, well, I think I like the discussion that some of those things maybe can fit in LCAP, but some of them, while they're important, they would fit somewhere else, and we'll include them in other things that we are doing. Yeah. Okay, I just had a few hopefully quick ones. And I had a few specific questions like about specific action items, but I did try to keep them to, when we had talked last time about kind of what our, as a board, kind of what our focus areas were. So that was kind of why I had some specific questions. So one of them is, okay, so this is goal 4, action 6, and it was improved representation on parent committees that are more reflective of the composition of the student body. So I loved that, but then I didn't see like a kind of a benchmark or like what is like the expected outcome. So do we have an indicator connected to that? If we don't, I would love to see some sort of indicator connected to them, because I think that's one that, is something that we feel is an important one.
Okay, I'm going to ask Tasha to come back on and maybe speak to that. Or we can just make note of your comment. Thank you, Tasha.
Tasha, you're still muted.
Yeah, my connectivity went off for the last portion of your comment. So if you could answer that, add the last portion of your comment.
Yeah, well, so it was just, so I like that action item, but I didn't see any kind of like measurable outcomes or results. Like we want to improve it, but like how, like what is the outcome? What are we hoping to achieve? So I just would love to see kind of that clear expected kind of outcome benchmark connected to that goal.
So a metric associated with the action. I think that's your.
Yes. Right. And that's the part I missed. Which action? I heard everything else but the action.
So the goal 4, action 6, it's about family representation and parent committees.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to be sure I had the right one. So what we're doing is we're using this year as a baseline, but very similar to what Jeremy talked about is we're trying to be sure that our teams are reflecting our school communities. So that may vary from school to school, depending on, what type councils we're talking about. But we also are trying to seek out if particular families are not there, why are they not there? Are they not there because they don't know? Are they not there because they weren't asked? Getting more information about why they're not there, and being sure that they are there, even if they're not there in physical space, are they there in communicative space, or getting their input in, or outcomes coming out that reflect who they are. So those are baselines that we need to develop and get that we actually don't have. But we do know enough to know that the groups are not really reflective of who our school communities, and we're trying to get them more like that.
Okay, so this year will kind of be baseline, figuring things out, and then there will be kind of some metrics of, okay, we want to improve this percentage or whatever it might be. Okay.
That is correct. Mm-hmm.
Great to hear. Okay, then the other one I already mentioned. And then this one, I just wanted to check, like it was in my notes that it was going to be added. So this is goal 5, action 10. It's the one about extended learning. And I just had asked for the piece of adding that word effective extended learning, right? We've talked about that in the past. And then I think last week, we hadn't necessarily talked about it as an LCAP focus, but just that importance of extended learning. And we have this extra it's one-time funding, but one-time funding to be creative. And so I just wanted to add that piece of, we want to, which I think we all wanted it. It's not that we didn't want it, but just adding that word effective.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And then I think that was all. Let me just go through my pages really quick. Okay, yes, that was it. Bridget, do you have one more question or comment?
Yeah, when Nancy was talking a couple of weeks ago about, we both went to this equity thing, and they were talking about, an equity thing. They were talking, it was for board members, and it was about the LCAP, remember? And they were talking about language. And I remember one of the things that they were saying in there was about the language of all versus each and every. Have you gone through it? I mean, I noticed like I was looking at action 4 and I was looking at a lot of the actions and they say all students. And, you know, have you gone through it with that kind of a, you know, wordsmithing of the difference between all and each and every? Like, I'm just curious if you've taken a pass through that equity lens that they were suggesting to us through the English learner and Latinx equity. I don't even, Nancy, do you remember what that one was called? It was and Isabel, you were there too. That was the one where they were talking about the LCAP.
But we get your point. I do hear you, Bridget, and I do agree that each and every one is much more specific than all, because all is very broad and general. So I hear you. Is the request or is the ask that we go through our LCAP and change all to each and every one?
Well, I guess for me the request would be to. I think there was a reason for doing that. Nancy, did you want to? You're muted still.
So it's a matter of intentionality, of understanding the who and the commitment to how expansive is the action. So I think it's something that we can look at and work towards, but have a shared common understanding at this point in time. This is what this is what we mean. And work towards that.
Yeah, like I think when we're talking about students, each and every student, if we're talking about families, it feels more inclusive to say all families, but it's like a language thing. And so it's probably it's just something I would just ask you to take a look at and, you know, and consider. I mean, Isabel, you were there. What do you
Yes, and yeah, in that occasion, it was the state plan for English learners, and the state was saying that they were going to try to move forward instead of Latinx or English development towards multilingual children and multilingual families. They haven't. I mean, we don't have to legally change that, but in the same way, they were saying that each and all is more inclusive and is more specific about equity that all, because all might be used the 90% of them, while each and all is we make sure that everybody is.
So that was my only other comment. Thank you.
All right, so it sounds like a move towards that, but we don't need to spend hours and hours. But moving towards that and having that in our mind, I think that's great. Yeah. And as she was talking, I thought I had one more, but it was like on 2 different pages. So my last one, so it's related to all of goal 3. So as I was looking at, you know, farther down in the document where it shows like the actual specific metrics, and then it also shows the actions. And it seemed like they were very different. It seemed like the like metrics and outcomes. So it's like what I think Tony calls like the measuring and reporting results. Were kind of all about like absenteeism, like suspensions, which are all important pieces. And I'm sure that's probably based on state things, right? But then when you go to the action items, our action items were like more of the really like the stuff that we're working on, like the really great stuff, you know, like working on the SEL and the CRT. I can't remember all of it. So it just was kind of interesting to me. And maybe that's just because of what state needed, that we didn't have kind of benchmarks specifically related to those really fantastic action items. Is what I'm kind of asking or saying making sense?
It is. So it's kind of thinking of it from a big lens, right? We have to do those actions, because if we don't do those actions, it impacts our suspensions, it impacts our academic outcomes, it impacts kids coming to school. So how do you know if those things that you're doing, culturally responsive teaching, socio-emotional learning, all coaching in general, the metrics that go with that is, are kids performing academically? Are they coming to school? Are they following school norms? Are they able to communicate how they're feeling? And, you know, looking at other metrics, what does it look like when they say how they're feeling? So those are the outcomes we have to look to, but it's also the ones the state also wants us to look to, but it's the only other thing we have that's tangible to measure, because everything else is qualitative. What kids tell us, families tell us, teachers tell us, how they're feeling, how they're doing. So those are the metrics that we can say it's making a difference or not making a difference, I guess you could say.
Okay, thank you. Just, and as you were talking about, and I'd have to go back to look at them specifically. But just thinking about Isabel's comment earlier too. And so again, I don't remember if these were the action items specifically about the teacher training related to it, but maybe like, so again, not this year, it sounds like this year's more of a base year, but maybe, next year when we get updates, maybe we do want to try to, if we can, include some of those qualitative, well, it's harder to measure them, those qualitative metrics to make sure we are doing that work, maybe in the subsequent years. Okay.
And one of those will be tied back to the question about having consistency through our survey data as well.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were talking, I was thinking about, this panorama survey stuff would probably play a piece in it as well.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you on behalf of the board. Thank you, everyone. I know Mala is the lead on it, but she pulls lots of people into, right? Everyone is really involved with putting this together to make sure that we are meeting the needs of each of our students. So thank you, everyone, for all your work. And this was a good conversation. And so we look forward to seeing the final work in a couple weeks and moving forward with all this great work. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's do sorry, I'm trying to get back to my agenda. All right, so let's do a 5-minute recess. It's 9:20 right now. Let's come back at 9:25. And then we will be on to 8B. And with that, we'll take our recess. All right, we are reconvening and we are on to item 8B, the public hearing for the 2021-2022 proposed adoption budget. Lori.
Okie dokie, I'm not great at the screen sharing thing, so I'll try my best.
Looks good.
Okay, so I'm here tonight to present to you our proposed adoption budget for the 21-22 school year. If I can change slides, maybe I can't. There we go. Okie dokie. These are the major revenue assumptions that I built into the adoption budget. Our property tax revenue is projected to increase 2% over 2021. That's approximately $1.5 million. Our LCFF hold harmless revenue is flat at $2.9 million. Our education protection account revenue is budgeted at $1.23 million. Our property tax revenue is budgeted at $1 million. Our one-time AB 86 funding for the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant and the in-person instructional grant is budgeted at $5.6 million. This funding is to be specifically used for certificate and classified salaries in support of in-person instructions or services, supplementary academic support outside of the regular school day, supplementary instructional materials, training for staff on trauma-informed practices to support family and student social emotional health. Our state special education budget is budgeted with a 3.84% COLA, which is approximately $200,000 over the 2021 level. Our federal revenue is projected at the 2021 level of students, and that includes special education IDEA. Our restricted and unrestricted lottery is projected at a combined $199 per ADA, and that's $1.24 million. And our lease revenue based on the current contracts is budgeted at $5.6 million. So our total general fund revenue budget is $114.9 million. Property taxes and state aid being the largest portion of that at $90.7 million, which is approximately 79% of our general fund revenue budget. Parcel tax and EPA are projected at $2.3 million, which is a little over 2% of our budget. Lease revenue is projected at $5.6 million, and that's 4.9% of the budget. Our AB 86 funding is also projected at $5.6 million for 4.9% of the budget. Our federal revenue is $2.1 million, and that's just shy of 2% of the budget. Our state revenue is budgeted at $7.1 million, and that is a little over 6% of the budget. And finally, our local revenue is projected at $1.5 million, which is 1.3% of the budget. So these are the major expenditure assumptions that are built into the adoption budget. Our certificated FTE has increased 19.6 FTE over the 2021 second interim budget. The increases for teachers are equitable outcome, TOSAs, coaches, social workers, and we have a new preschool program manager. Classified FTE has increased 3.8 FTE over the 2021 second interim, and that increases for paraeducators. Certificate and classified compensation changes, including step and column increases, are included in the budget, as well as a projected 3% salary schedule increase. So the STRS rate for 21-22 is projected at 16.92%, which is a 4.8% increase over 2021. PERS is projected at 22.91%, which is a 10.6% increase over 2021. And based on the 2021 health and welfare rates for United Healthcare is projected to increase 6.7% over 2020, and Kaiser is projected to increase 0.56% over 2020. And based on 2021 ADA information, our charter school in lieu tax payments for Summit Denali, Rocket Ship Discovery Prep, and Rocket Ship Los Sueños are projected at $800,000. So our total general fund expenditure budget is $107.5 million, salaries and benefits being the largest portion of the budget at $94 million, which is a little over 87% of our expenditure budget. $2.2 million is budgeted for books and supplies, which is over 2% of the budget. And then finally, $11.3 million for services and other expenditures, which is 10.5% of the budget. This category includes additional support for child nutrition and state preschool, the transfer to the Special Reserve Fund for future technology upgrades, as well as contracted services for consultants, assessments, the purchase of software licenses, hotspots, PPE, and other COVID-related safety equipment. This is the multi-year look of the ratio of revenue to expense. The 2021 estimated actuals revenues projected at $115.6 million, which is an increase of 9.8% over 1920. And the 2021 estimated actuals expenses are projected at $109.5 million, which is 6.9 million higher than 1920. Then based on the assumptions in the adoption budget, revenue is projected for 21-22 to outpace expenditures by 6.9%. This is also a multi-year look at the general fund beginning and ending balances. The 2021 ending balance is projected to increase slightly over the second interim budget, due in part to an increase in our projected property taxes as of the P2 reporting period. For 21-22, the ending fund balance is projected to increase by $7.4 million due to a 2% property tax revenue increase and the shifting of certificated and classified FTE into one-time funding for the in-person instructional grant and the expanded learning opportunity grant. So this is a multi-year look at our unrestricted reserves, which is a combination of the unrestricted general fund reserve fund 17. Based on the 21-22 adoption budget assumptions, we are projected to have a total unrestricted reserve at year's end of $36.5 million. A portion of that amount has been set aside for current requirements in future projects, such as revolving cash, stores, estimated carryover, the Lakewood Library project, future textbook adoptions, future maintenance projects, the 2021 salary look back for SEA, CSEA, and SCAMP, a projected increase in lieu tax pass-through to charter schools, and future technology upgrades. After all of these set-asides, we will still maintain a 23% reserve, which is in compliance with our board policy. So quickly to summarize, the projected ending balance of the projected $7.4 million increase in the 2021-22 general fund ending balance is due to a small property tax revenue increase in the shifting of certificated and classified FTE into one-time funding sources. The 21-22 special reserve fund ending balance is $13.8 million. The total projected unrestricted reserves at year end are 34%. The multi-year projections all have positive ending balances, and we will maintain our basic aid status. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lori. This one is also a public hearing. So I call the public hearing to order at 9:35. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. Give it just a little bit longer since this is a public hearing. All right, not seeing any public. I close this public hearing. I see public, but not want to speak. I close this hearing at 9:36. Board, is there any questions or comments? There are no questions or comments from the four of you? All right, Lori, thorough and effective. I do have a question though. I was expecting comments, so I didn't have my paper ready. Hold on. Okay, so mine are just kind of related to, so I'd asked about, that the extra money, and I know, right, it's because we're getting a lot of these one-time fundings, and there's, the way we like shift money to have it go in different spots. So I know it looks bigger than what it is, and we need to be very careful because it's, right, we have a bigger number because of one-time funding. I know we've talked about this before, but I just kind of want to just reiterate that I think, it looks like we still have a few million more extra than we had thought, and then we talked about this before, but with that extended learning or in other ways, right? Like, I just this is our chance this year, right? Like essentially to throw money at things we just want to experiment with, right? And see if what sticks and what works. So I think board agrees with me, right? That again, we understand we have to be careful, right? We can't do things that are gonna be long-term, but just hoping that with this extra money that is coming from the state and federal, that we can really try, creative things with it and stuff. Nancy.
Yes, I'd say this is an incubator year. Let's see what can bubble up and what we might be able to initiate and leverage for the future.
Bridget.
So I just had a question. Did we have Lori, when you were talking about the salary increase, not the salary increases, the employee increases, and you said that in the classified we had like 3+ new people that we hired on. Mm-hmm. For some reason, did we have a lot of empty positions left over from the previous year? Because I felt like that you said they were paraeducators, like.
In 2021, we hired 15 new paraeducators. And we still have those paraeducators. These 3.8 are supplementary to them.
Okay, thank you. I was like, I thought we ever had a ton of people. Thank you.
Of course.
Struggling with clicking my unmute. Okay, no other questions or comments. Thank you, Lori, for all your great work, and I know there's others behind you putting that all together. So thank you to everyone. We appreciate it. Okay, we are on to 8C, the first reading of Board Bylaw 9320, meetings and notices. And that is Mike.
Hello, so this is an update to our board bylaw that really is a pretty comprehensive look at how we run our meetings. It incorporates some new law around electronic meetings. That's not exactly the right term, teleconference locations and et cetera, and the laws around that. Interestingly, I think we're just getting notice today. I got one from DWK and I think from CSBA that allows for meetings like this going into the new year. So I think that this bylaw accounts for that. Another minor thing to note in this bylaw is it sets the time for our regular meetings at 7 o'clock, which is interesting. Regular meetings need to be held consistently at the same time, same, second Thursday or first and third Thursday of the month. It's very consistent so that the public knows when they are. But this one does set it at 7 o'clock, which is something we may want to reconsider moving forward. And if we do, let's remember that it's in the bylaw. So we would have to update the bylaw to do that, which is easy enough. So that's board bylaw 9320.
Thank you. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. And not seeing any. Board discussion, it looks like Nancy. Muted.
Until you just mentioned it, I hadn't incorporated the concept of changing the time for the regular meeting. Does this mean that if we were to add on and have an earlier, we would have to have a special board meeting for a topic if we wanted to start earlier and then have a regular meeting starting at 7?
Yeah, I suppose one way to handle that would be kind of, as you said, to consider that a special meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. Which I don't think we've done it that way before. I think we just started earlier, but that's probably the correct way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, board, any other questions or comments? Are we good putting it on consent next time?
So is this where we say this is 7 p.m. regular board meetings? Is that what this, I didn't realize that when we were.
Well, he's just making note that we have it in one of our board bylaws, right? So as you know, in the future, if we are going to change them, so we're just going to keep it as it is now because that's what they are, right? But like in future years, he was just mentioning like if we're going to change it, we also need to go back and change it in our board bylaw.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay, so we're good getting it on consent for next time. Okay. We are now on to D, the first reading of board policy 0430, comprehensive local plan for special education. Tasha.
Alrighty, so this is an update regarding our SELPA plan. We have a SELPA plan, we keep that updated. And so this update is kind of to reflect some of the changes that we've gone through over the last couple of years. Just trying to be sure that we are giving our special populations the attention that they need and being sure that we're focused on the outcomes for the special populations. And so this is kind of putting an intentional focus on our work for the next 2 years and incorporated that language into our SELPA plans. And our current plan is updated and on our website, and we may have an additional update that may go on there. But this is what this plan is reflecting. So asking for your recommendation to approve board policy 0430.
Thank you. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. And not seeing any. Board, is there any questions or comments? All right, so we're good putting it on consent next time. All right. Thank you, Tasha. We're now on to E, the first reading of board policy 5148.3, preschool early childhood education.
Okay. So this is an update to our policy with emphasis on regulations to incorporate, in particular, our state preschool into our uniform complaint procedures. Currently, our state preschools are not necessarily incorporated into that current language. So coming to you probably in the next board meeting or after, we'll be presenting updated policy with regards to our uniform complaint procedures as well, and that policy. And it's just to ensure that we're also looking at the health and safety and welfare of our preschool programs with the same lens and intentionality that we are our K through 8 programs. And so with that, looking for your recommendation for board policy 5148.3.
Thank you. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature. And not seeing any board. Nancy?
Yes. I appreciate the language in that in the board policy that talked about having a statement about preschool. I would like to see us develop a draft similar to what we did with the equity policy that we initiated, where it just kind of has a common statement of our philosophy about early care and the importance of engagement of families and the connectivity between preschool and our further academic growth and development as kids are coming through.
Nancy, just for quick clarification, are you asking for that kind of related to the piece that was in the policy where it says like the board shall approve for the district's preschool program a written philosophical statement, goals, yada, yada?
Correct. Correct. And it isn't, this is not to say that our overall goals and philosophy that we have already printed in there is inadequate. I just think with the change of emphasis with the new early care master plan that's rolling out and the emphasis on early care, that it's a wonderful opportunity just to kind of create that. And it doesn't have to be created right now before we adopt this, but it's something that I would like to see happen, because if we're looking at creating a warm and welcoming environment, I want something that's a little bit softer for families to see as well. So
the idea maybe like in the next year or so.
Correct.
Kind of going through and looking at that old philosophy and then with intention kind of creating a new one. Does that?
Well, just making sure that we're updated, it's warm, it's welcoming, it's as inclusive, because this is a family's first introduction to who we are, and saying that we value their role in participation, not only in their child's education, but we welcome their family into our system.
Yeah, that sounds good. Board, is there support of kind of looking at that in the next year?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. Anything else from this board policy? Okay, so we're good moving it on to consent. Okay. Thank you, Tasha.
Thank you.
I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Bridget.
I thought that it was in the, I thought I put it in the packet, but maybe I didn't. You know, before the pandemic, right before somebody from the County Office of Education came in and said that in 94087 we had a need for state-funded preschool, and we all thought that there were like 300 kids who were eligible, and there were no state-funded preschools in that zip code. I see in the policy that it's going to be deferred to the master plan. The master plan's still coming. Are we thinking that like something like that would be like, you know, that kind of data would be rolled into our master plan to look at, to see if we could accommodate something like that? Is that what this policy is saying? Because it seems like it's deferring to the master plan, or?
Yeah. So it's about basically looking at what you have to be sure you're accommodating well what you have, but also if you're planning and developing new things, if there's a way to incorporate spaces or situations that would accommodate for the younger, our preschoolers, our early learners, thinking about that in your planning. So, you know, whether it's even the design of current rooms. So if you're redoing something, thinking about the spaces and how they're being utilized. And if you do need to expand, how do you expand? And, you know, I know we're looking at ways to do that in our current facilities through collaboration with other outside partners, but also do we need to even rethink our current design? And we do have some plans we've been working on how that could be possible. And we're going to start rolling out some of that this year, and we'll actually be coming back to you to talk about some of those changes within preschool. So it's just kind of constantly looking at it. What can you do? Are you delivering it in the best way possible? And are you serving as many as you possibly can, given the resources and infrastructure you kind of have in front of you?
Okay, thanks.
Good question.
Can I do a follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, so I serve on the LPC, the local early learning planning council for Santa Clara County, and we do assessments annually for zip codes for looking at what you had expressed, the need and the available spaces. And so it was difficult this year because of the pandemic. We're going to be going and doing things more robustly this next year. So that group will be reporting out about what the needs are in the zip codes that are covered by our district.
Great, thanks. Okay, we are on to our review and action items. So 9A, approval of declaration of need for fully qualified educators. Jeremy.
Yes. Good evening, board and attendees. Tonight I bring you the it's an annual declaration of need for fully qualified educators. Occasionally, we need to fill in kind of temporary and emergency situations, specialized credentials positions. This is a process created by the California Teacher Commission that allows us to place. This is a best guess. Obviously, this is not our preferred, but creating this declaration and your approval allows us to be able to place, should we need to, going into next year. If you notice in the application as well, we also have to show our diligent efforts for recruitment, and that's our partnerships with our universities. And so I recommend that the board approve the declaration of need for fully qualified educators.
Thank you. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. And not seeing any, board, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the declaration of need for fully qualified educators.
I second.
Board, any questions or comments? It's kind of a routine thing that we need to do each year. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. Thank you, Jeremy. We are on to 9B, approval of resolution R21-21 in the matter of requesting the Board of Supervisors of the County of Santa Clara establish a tax rate for bonds to be sold during fiscal year 2021-22 and authorizing necessary actions in connection therewith. And this is, I'm turning to Lori or to Rob.
They're a great team, but Rob is taking the lead on this one.
All right, well, good evening, board and public. Actually, tonight we have a guest here with us, and Lori and I work hand in hand on both the financing for our bond program and kind of keeping things moving as we go. But one of the really key members of the team to help us secure the funds and also monitor our tax rates as we proceed through the bonding program is Makiko Sato with ISOM Advisors. We've invited her to give you a brief overview about this resolution, as she is definitely the subject matter expert. So thank you for being here, Kiko.
Thank you, Rob. District voters approved Measure GG, which was a $100 million general obligation bond authorization in November of 2018 with over 70% support. The district is currently planning to issue the first series of bonds from their authorization during fiscal year 21-22. The county calculates bond tax rates in the summer, so we will not have the final debt service from the Series A bonds in time for them to calculate the tax rates. However, Education Code 15252 allows a district to request a county to include an estimate of the planned bond issuance in the tax rate calculation. The advantage of doing so is that it would allow for the earlier repayment of principal on the Series A bonds and to avoid fluctuating tax rates. And this is something that the district has done previously in advance of bond issuances, most recently, I believe in 2018-19. Oh, one other thing I wanted to add was that this is not the resolution actually authorizing the issuance of the bonds. That will be considered at another board meeting later in the fall.
Thank you. Is there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? If so, please use the raise hand feature. And not seeing any. Board, is there a motion?
Sure. I move that we approve Resolution 2121 in the matter of requesting the Board of Supervisors of the County of Santa Clara establish tax rate bonds to be sold during the fiscal year 2021-2022 and authorizing necessary actions in connection therewith.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thanks. Board, is there any questions or comments? Thank you so much for a team here for doing all this work, right? It's stuff that I mostly understand. I'm glad that there are experts who fully understand it to make sure we're doing it all right. So we appreciate your work. Thank you so much. If there's no other discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes.
Makiko, I want to thank you for staying up late to join us and for being a long-term partner with the district. You've assisted us for many years, and we really appreciate your expertise and service. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind words.
Thank you.
And now you can go to bed. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Makiko, for joining us. Thank you, Rob and Lori. All right, we're on to item 10, the consent agenda. If there are any members who wish to speak on any items on the consent agenda, please use the raise hand feature now. And not seeing any. Board, is there a motion?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Any comments, board? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. Just making note of, there's one informational item, 11A. It's the April 2021 District English Learner Advisory Committee meeting minutes that are in the agenda for those who are interested in looking at that. And with that, we are on to item 12, public comments on closed session items. So if there are any members who wish to speak on the closed session items, please use the raise hand feature now. And not seeing any, we will convene to close session at 9:59. We're all good, just going straight in, correct? For those who are finished for the night, feel free to be finished. You don't need to wait for us to come back. So good night. Thank you, staff. Thank you for those who are listening in. And we will report out after closed session.
Good night.
Good night, and give yourselves a hug.
Good reminder. Thanks, Tasha. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
So board members, you can start looking. Mike put in the chat the dates and times for possible meetings, so you can kind of start looking at that and looking at your calendar. And in just a minute, we'll then talk about seeing if we can find a date and time for that meeting. All right, we'll reconvene to open session at 10:49. Are you not seeing it in the chat, Nancy?
That's correct.
Mike, do you want to send again? I wonder if, since she wasn't in the meeting yet, if she just doesn't have access to it.
Yeah, let me try it again.
Okay. All right, enclosed. Sorry, I gotta.
These are the dates for the next board meeting. What are the dates for? Sorry.
For the meeting we just talked about in closed session. So our next meeting related to superintendent evaluation. So it's when we would do that meeting. So yeah, so let's finish the closed session wrap up, and then when we get to the future meetings, I would just say you can kind of look at your calendars and then we can talk about it in just a moment. Okay. In closed session, in closed session, we discussed conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation for 2 cases. We talked about public employment assistant superintendent contracts, and then public employee performance evaluation superintendent. The only action that was taken was regarding the conference with the legal counsel. And the board voted unanimously to approve a memorandum of understanding with ARC Insurance Company, which amends the settlement agreement with respect to the Bishop Elementary School modernization project. Under the MOU, adjustments were made to lower the district's overall payment relating to the closeout of the contract with USS Cal Builders. And with that, we are on to the final item, future meetings. So our next regular board meeting is Thursday, June 17th at 7 p.m. And then if you guys are looking at those dates, is there, so it looks like Bridget is not available on June 10th.
I can tell you June 9th and 10th is sounding pretty quick all of a sudden. It didn't a week ago, but now it does.
Yeah. But if that's the dates that works for everyone, we'll make that work, right?
Yeah.
June 9th is okay for me.
9th would work.
And do we want to do it next week? Do we want to do it?
I mean,
I'd rather not do it in the same week we have the board meeting.
That makes sense. So does the 9th work for everyone? Give a thumbs up if it works.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And
I would also prefer 6:30. It's just a safer time for me.
Okay.
I was just gonna say 6:30 would actually be better for me as well.
Okay. So the 9th at 6:30 sounds good. And is this
and I would love to do this like our last superintendent evaluation, do it in person. And then we can, if Nancy, if we can,
I'm not gonna be there.
Yeah, we can do what we did last time if that works. Does that work for everyone else to do in person? Okay. All right, so same as last time in the boardroom, spread out with our masks.
So this is essentially all closed session.
Yes, so this is a closed session on superintendent evaluation. And so it'll be June 9th at 6:30.
Good.
And then we already mentioned the other meeting, and unless there's anything else, I adjourn this meeting at 10:53 p.m. Sorry it's so late, but we did get through a lot and had some good discussions.
Yeah, it was a productive meeting.
Thank you, everybody.
Right.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Night all.
Thanks,
Good
Jesus.
morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Oh,
Good
yeah.
morning for you, Nancy.
Bye, everyone.